Sup dudes, today I will be ranking my own games. I'm 890, a game developer, and hopefully you might learn something from this. Although I'm just doing this for fun, to be honest. So I have them here in chronological order, starting with Square. Also know that these are only games that were published at some point in time. This doesn't include unreleased, unfinished games. So Square. I mean, it was my first game. It has its moments, to be honest. It's not the worst. Thunderstorm, D tier. I like some of the pixel art that I made for that game. And it's also my first game in Game Maker Studio 2. Super Slaughter Dungeon, also D tier, actually. It's fun at times, has its moments. Then Quo, I think that's F tier, because it's just solitaire, but with terrible music, bugs, and bad level design. And I think it's obvious enough that Blob also goes here, because I mean, come on, Blob. Blob is just atrocious. No, it's literally just like a shooter where you just click and shoot stuff, and it's F. It's the worst thing I've ever created. And then moving on, Mr. Moneybags. I put it on D tier as well, because it has also quite good pixel art, like not terrible pixel art. Then moving on to Beyond. It has a really cool concept, but it's poorly executed. I'd give it E. And then comes my first ever commercial game. Just also the first game here that is still available online. It's Polar. And just because it's my first game, I'll give it a C. And also, at some point, it's quite charming. You know, the kind of inexperience with how you should develop games, and there's some mechanics like for example the cheat menu. I mean, it was useful when I was making the game, but I don't know. It's fun. It's a fun thing. And the next game is Bandit. E tier, F tier. Actually, I'll move Beyond to D tier. Yeah, this is E tier. Now we're moving on to the kind of mediocrity zone, if you will. Because, for example, it starts with Bandit, but mainly all of these games up until Void Shot, I believe. Up until Soul Swap, actually, not including some exceptions, are just there's no polish, there's no particles, no screen shake, no game feel. There's just barely enough effort put into the art that you know that someone took their time to make the art, but it's also so crappy that it's like it would be better off minimalist. Then we're following through with the Lone Coder, which is an easy F. It was basically making the game, except it was executed quite poorly, without planning, without balancing, and there's also a feature where you can playtest your game at any time, and that's just atrocious. Then there's the 6-digit computer. It did start the 6-digit computer saga, just so I won't give it F but E. No, actually, I will give it a D. The reason why it's not any higher is just because the gameplay is quite terrible, and yeah, I mean there's way too many commands, which I fixed later in 1DC. and the levels are kind of poorly thought out because, I mean, not necessarily poorly thought out, just, I mean, my brother thought of them, and I don't know, I haven't playtested most of them. So I'm not sure if they like use the whole concept to its fullest extent. Then we have A Week in Haybrook Town, Easy F. Steel Wheelie Automobili. I will give it an E because it has its moments. Even though it, as I said, it has no game feel and like graphics that are. There's just enough graphics that you can tell someone put effort into the graphics, but not so much that it actually looks good. And the gameplay is terrible. But it does have a few nice sprites, which is the most I can say. Although actually, thinking about it, I'll put whatever this is called, Week in Haybrook Town into E, just because of the concept, honestly. It's basically that you play rock, paper, scissors, but there's two additional signs that you can show, the band-aid and the pistol. Although it's really poorly balanced, so the pistol is actually like the best one by far. Anyhow, next one on our list is Intergalactic Inhabitants Mission, which I will give E tier because it's quite unoriginal gameplay, not really that good sprites. Yeah, just meh, very meh. Galaxy is an easy F, very easy. I'd give it a G if there was a G. This was meant to be a platformer with no gravity, but it just because you're the same size as the tiles, it feels really awkward to play through it. So there you go. Then we've got Mirror Body. I will give this an E because the gameplay is terrible. However, the atmosphere is starting to develop slowly, but it's starting. I've got rain particles and I've got like little what do you call it? Like the water vapor that comes out of your mouth when it's cold particles. And then there's Void Shot, which I think, I'm not sure, C or D. Because at least, I mean, on the newest version, the gameplay is, there's a lot of rules to keep in mind. But once you get them, the gameplay loop is actually a bit, quite fun. So, no, I'll give it a C. It does look quite cool. And CMYK, extremely difficult, minimalist, not too much effort put into it. E. Just Blast F. This was my first Nokia 3310 game, and it was horrible. It was basically supposed to be like Tetris, except you can shoot a vertical laser to destroy some of the falling pieces. It's terrible. Then we have S, which I will actually give a C tier, because it's finally doing something interesting with the title and the concept, I guess. Although it's only the last few levels that are actually really interesting. And even with that, in the last level you have to wait for like 50 ticks before you can actually walk through the level. It's a solid puzzle game. Then we have Soul Swap, which is basically just, it's the exact same atmosphere as Mirror Body, but with slightly better graphics and slightly worse gameplay. E tier. 8-bit knockout. Oh, this is a good one. I'll give it a B. First one so far to be on B. It's a fighting game where the more you're punched, the stronger your punches become. Which, if you think about it, is not necessarily the best game design. Because if you punch someone a lot, then they can just continuously kill you. But this is the first game where I really nailed the game feel. So that deserves a B. Then we have Square Mini. I'm not sure, C or D. I'll give it a D. Because it's as original as it is to make a game with 8 by 8 pixels resolution. There's one level that is particularly unbeatable, and it's just very difficult, and I don't know. It's fine. It's fine. I'd put it between D and C if I could. Ooh, Wither. Wither gets a B. Now, of course, the game I'm developing right now, Fermata, will be an easy S once it's done. But Wither, I feel like, first of all, one of the things that I'm improving on in Fermata compared to Wither is I'm allowing the player to move on the ground, which is actually quite important, because I remember there's one section where you basically have to commit suicide in order to have the right orientation towards the loops, and in order to beat the level at all. But it does use a gameplay mechanic that is, in my opinion, very unique. Quite good level design, a lot of Easter eggs, really solid game. Then we have Meteor Heat, which is C tier, I guess. Kind of mediocre arcade game. Not much to say about it. Project Sphera. Well, there's a long story about this game, how I was accused of submitting to multiple game jams, even though it was relevant to all of them. I will give it a D. D? No, I'm not sure actually. The levels are fine. The art is fine. No, I'll give it a D. It's just not that exciting. Then SCAD. I think it's E or F. No, F. The music is very annoying, and the gameplay is, apart from one short section, the gameplay is just basically a walking simulator with a few extra steps. Now, Flood the Crystal Ninja, as a precursor to Crystal Ninja, it's fine, but as a game on its own, it's quite bad. I'll give it a C tier, even though the gameplay is extremely difficult and bad. It does have nice graphics, like really nice graphics, and a nice atmosphere. Then PIN, I don't know if it should be, I think I'll give it a C, or actually, no, I'll give it a B. I think it's extremely original, even if some of the voice lines are kind of cringy to listen to, and sometimes I make mistakes and don't care about it in the voice lines. But overall, there's a lot of effort put into it, and I might even give it A. That's a dilemma. A or B? A, actually. I'll give it A tier. First one so far. Just because there's so many different paths you can take. Then the next one is one probably most of you, well, I don't think if you've seen most of these, but this is Panic Attack, a game which I made for GM48 once. and it is unbelievably atrocious. Although actually it does have a nice atmosphere, even if it's thanks to the music of a different person, namely Dane, who made the music. And I mean, the gameplay is terrible, and like there's no polish at all. And Simon Said has a really nice gameplay. I'm wondering if to give it B or C. B. Really innovative gameplay. However, it is implemented in a way that is kind of not fun. Because basically once you make a single mistake, you make 3 mistakes automatically. I don't know what... There's probably a bug somewhere that determines that, but anyhow. Yeah, Simon Said. Pretty nice overall. Crystal Ninja, A tier. It is really fun, quite atmospheric. There's a lot of stuff to do, except for the fact that there's only 1 level so far. Blind Maze, F tier. It was just a low-effort experiment, to be honest, and it resulted in Chemna, which is basically a much better version of Blind Maze, but Blind Maze itself is poorly executed. Nocturnian, D tier? D or C? Sus. I'm not sure actually. Because Nocturnian is quite short. However, it also does use a clever main mechanic, even though I did steal it from my brother. I'll give it a D tier just because it's so short. Swift's Block 3310. I think it's a D tier. It's a quite mediocre gameplay mechanic, and I mean some of the puzzles are okay. No, I think I'll give it a C, just because I spent so much effort putting in polish, even with such a small screen resolution and two colors. Then there's Planet Dome, which is basically what happens if you put in way too much screen shake, the game, and also what happens if you try to give enemies pathfinding, except it's kind of bugged and biased. Actually, no, I'll give it a C. Planet Dome is... it's a game, I guess. I mean, it feels really good to play. It feels very chaotic, but if you want to win, there's a specific strategy you must follow, and it's kind of the exact same every single time, and it gets boring very fast. The next up is 1000-bit, A tier. I'm not giving it S because the lessons are static, the levels are not that well thought out, and apart from that, it's a fantastic game. The next up is Task Square. Honestly, I'll give it A tier. It looks really cool, and it's a really cool gameplay concept. So there you go, A tier. Game.randomize. D or E? I'll give it E tier. It is a quite good gameplay concept that I reused in Randomization Station. It's actually a really good concept, except it's terribly executed, and it just... Actually, no, I'll give it a D tier. I'll give it a D tier because sometimes it just gets so chaotic that it's just silly. Then the last assignment. I think if it should be B or C tier. because it's really charming. I love point-and-click games in general, so even if it's one I made myself and I know exactly how to solve it, it's still fun to go through it. I'll give it a B tier. It's charming. Then we have Not Quite Dead Yet. I think it's also a B tier. The gameplay is hard to explain, and I made it additionally confusing. For a reason, but I did make it confusing. In a way similar to Planet Doom, I also made that game confusing. But the art is nice, and the poems are nice. Or not the poems, but are they poems? I don't even remember. The little snippets of text before each level. Then 23D demo. Fantastic concept. Quite well executed as well. Too short, unfortunately, but but there we go. 23D. I'd give it a C. C? Is that what it deserves? I'll give it a B. Whoa, Platonus. C? I think it's a C. There's a lot of effort put into it, but the gameplay is very stale. Compared to something like Heal Vivid, which is similar, but it's a lot more interesting. Then we have Luna. Luna is misunderstood, I'd say. I'd give it a D tier. There's unbelievable amounts of effort put into this game, but the gameplay kind of doesn't really work that well because the screen is so small and your character has to be also small. It's just it just doesn't work. Then l'œuvre. Is it A or S tier? I think it's the first one to have S tier. Well, obviously I won a game jam with this game, but apart from that, I mean, it's a really good game. I nailed the minimalist style properly this time. And it's just a great game. Like, I don't have anything else to say. Then we have 1DC, which I think... I'm debating whether to give it A or S tier. I'll think about it. Because 1DC is... it's really well made. I think I'll give it S tier. I mean, apart from perhaps lack of content, I don't have any criticism to give it. It's just well made. Then the Zero Digit Computer. Don't forget about that game. Actually, E tier, just because it's slightly interesting. The Grand Heist of Neon City. I think I'll give it a C tier, or maybe B tier. Tons and tons of effort. I don't know. The gameplay has this very specific quality, similar to Luna, that it just, for me, it doesn't seem too satisfying to play. Unfortunately, so I'll give it a B tier. Chimno, B tier. Well executed, clever concept, doesn't really work that well. Doesn't work all that well. PCSD, don't forget about that masterpiece. D tier. It's original concept, poor execution. Cool graphics as well. Zacięcie. I think that deserves a B tier actually. Even though it's such a small game, it's like Simon said, but made into an actually fun, interesting game. Although actually thinking about it, C tier, it doesn't look that well. It doesn't look that good. Stricter. I'll give it a B tier. It's a nice vibe. It's original concept and a lot of effort put into the chatbot. And actually, like, I remember very little of it right now, so it's interesting for me to just try out some random dialogue options and see where it leads me. It's interesting for me to discover. The next up is Nihil Vivit, which I think is A tier. The only thing preventing it from getting S tier is that the gameplay does get a bit repetitive, I guess. And I could have done something to make the actual terrain generation more varied, but so far, all that I've done, I think it's a fantastic game, and it's really interesting to just walk around and find the different environments. And it's amazing how much a few colors and a few sounds can do to create an atmosphere. Then next up we have the aldehyde demos, which, I mean, they are demos, but C tier. There's not much to do in them. They're just demos after all, but it's a fun concept, and I especially put quite a bit of effort into the pinball demo. Then Escape Reality. To be honest, S tier. It's just I love my writing. Like, I might be a narcissist, but I mean, narcissist in the sense of loving yourself, but that's just a really well written game, and the few sound effects I have are, I think, really, really good. The one thing I don't like is when spoiler alert. There's one point where murder occurs, let's just say it like that, and then a short jingle plays, and then you can immediately go to the next dialogue option in which another jingle plays. So that might be, I mean, the casual players might experience those jingles overlapping. That's the only criticism, honestly. Randomization station. It's basically like game.randomize, but more controlled, and that also makes it that makes it more playable but less interesting. C tier. It has really nice animations. Then we have Skyfall, which is I'll give it a B tier, because the gameplay is not that exciting. I mean, no, the gameplay is nice at night, but once you've already learned it, then at day you'll just be bored. And also to really benefit from more gameplay types, which I was supposed to be working 6 months ago on. I still haven't gotten around to it, but oh well. And finally, my most recent game, Day of the Dice, A tier. Just barely not enough content to give it S tier, but amazingly executed, really fun arcade game. So there you have it. That is my current tier list of my current video games. I'm right now working on a remake of Wither, basically. You will see the devlog on that quite soon, I hope. Thanks for watching.